Good morning. Welcome to Ag Talking Raw, where I talk raw about agriculture and other things that are on my mind. Right, Teresa?
Left.
My wife's sitting here next to me, so we're going to behave ourselves today, right?
That's what you say.
We never behave ourselves. Me and my wife are like a couple of teenagers, right? I think so. I really love my wife. She's a good girl. She keeps me straight and narrow, I think. Maybe I'm not narrow.
Look at like your corn.
Actually,
on my corn.
Did you hear that? She's picking on the way I planted that corn. I like being the talk of the town when it comes to planting corn.
That's right.
It is. So when you're planting corn, just take a fifth of whiskey and just drink it and go play with your GPS. So my GPS, it's old. I've been told I need to update it. I don't know how. There's no way of hooking it to a computer. The thing is, God, you know how old that thing is already? I bet that thing is 14, 15 years old. Because I bought that back in 2006 or 7. So, how many years old is that? 14 years ago? 2006? 16 is 10? Yeah, that's 14, 15 years old. Isn't that? It's at a 14, 15-year-old range. Okay, so there is the finger pincher style wheel that will steer for you. I don't want to do that. I've been trying to find a wire that goes to that. It's a Trimble. It's a Trimble GPS Easy Guide. It's an Easy Guide 250, but I think it's an Easy Guide 500 because it says 500 right on the face of it, but I don't know. So anyways, it's consistent as you go down across the field. Now the globe is at the top, or the antenna is at the top of the tractor. And I'm not going to videotape them because I'm going to get crucified by people and the way these rows are. And I'm okay with the crooked rows. I'm okay with rows being closer together than not. I see a lot of guys running twin rows, so what's the difference, you know? Anyway, it's when I get wide is what annoys me. So anyways, from that tractor, it'll wobble going down across the field. So you get a rock, and it'll go this way. And then you get a rock, and it'll go that way. You get a ditch or a dip, and it'll go this way. And it walks. And I don't believe there's a way that I can adjust the height of it, because it woggling back and forth like that, it drives me absolutely nuts because it's constantly telling me to steer. It'll be spot on a flat level field. It doesn't do this. But on a crooked field, on a field that's on its side, it's just annoying. So anyways, I got crooked rows, and Teresa's decided to pick on me for that. But, oh, and I also had some comments. I should probably go to the comment section where, you know what, I think I am going to go to the comment section. You know, it's always fun to go to the comment sections when we do this, because I did a population video on One Lonely Farmer. Excuse me, I'm kind of sucking snot. I should go blow my nose. Ew. That was gross. And don't tell me you've never done that. Usually I just spit it out, but my wife would be mad if I spit that on the floor. So, that was gross. Pollen. We slept with the window open last night. What does rice do to the human body? Don't you love these commercials? Okay, so what I'm going to do is you're going to see me looking off to the left side of my screen because, well, you can. And that's where all the comments are. And I'm going to look for these. So this is on my population check. Now, the reason I did this was because Cold Corn Star did it. And they were shooting for a much lower population, which I thought was kind of strange. But, you know, hey, to each their own. If they know their soil, that's kind of what you got to look at. And if they know what they've put down, then that's kind of what you got to look at. And if you know the variety that you're planting, that's kind of what you got to look at. So the two varieties that I planted, and I did narrow it down to two, a 106-day and a 100-day variety from Golden Harvest. These are loaded varieties. They have everything in them. And, you know, the only thing that they won't do is kill weeds, if you ask me. They won't kill weeds, but they do grow very vigorously and very, very well. They have the potential to have an average yield of 260 plus bushels to the acre. An average yield of 260 plus bushels to the acre. Last year, I got 308 bushels to the acre on the 106-day variety in a field that was treated slightly different than the rest of them. It had eggshells on it and and it had spent compost as well. And it was just a very, very, very good field. It worked very, very well. Now, this year, the spent compost, I went and spent money on a walking floor trailer so that I could go and get spent compost and get it on every acre that I put corn on, which was not the case because I could not haul enough. My eyeballs were getting worn out on the end of the nose of that Peterbilt. I was tired. So anyway, with that being said, I was able to put this spent compost on a much larger scale than I was the previous year because I had more of it. And I put it in a place where it needed to be. And every acre that I did put this on was put on, I would definitely say between 7 and 10 tons to the acre. And the analysis that I have on this stuff was per cubic yard. And per cubic yard at 60% or 60 or 65% moisture is 1,000 pounds of this particular material. So if I put 10 tons, I put 20 cubic yards. If I put 7 tons, I obviously put 14 cubic yards of material onto this property. Now, there is a secret sauce that I put down that I'm not going to speak of because I don't want other people to know what it is. It's nothing new. It just doesn't normally get applied to soil. And it's actually a very old product, but it doesn't normally get applied to soil, but it does get applied to soil. And the rate is, well, we'll just leave it at that. We'll see if it works. I do have a check to see what the differences are in those fields. There is, and it's at the home farm, and I will let everybody know exactly where that is when it happens. But I'm never going to tell you what it was, just because it's my secret. Because I suspect, I am hoping that we get rain, and the yield bump from this, because of the organic matter that I've put down, and the organic matter that is actually in the one farm that I plowed under and was unable to get the oh, don't go anywhere, sweetheart.
I got things to do.
You got issues?
I got things to do.
She's got things to do. I love the moral support that I get from my wife. She's a pretty awesome person. So, and she's down there going, yeah, 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 making faces. So, but anyway, that product will make the organic matter work even better. See, there's a lot of, if you don't know anything about soil health and soil quality, organic matter is something that in today's world we have a lot of problems getting rid of. Let's just say getting rid of. I don't have a problem with organic matter on either any of these places that we've got, because there hasn't been corn grown on any of those properties. The home farm was the last place we grew corn, and I believe that was in, that had to have been in 2012 or 2013, because I don't think I know in 2012 we had corn there, and then 13 or 14 we put in beans, and then 15 it was all hay. 15, the spring of 15 it all went into hay. No, it went into hay before that. But anyways, whatever it was, I don't remember. You could go back and look on the videos on One Lonely Farmer and see. But yeah, so the organic level at the home farm was much better than where my mom was raised. And you got to be careful with organic matter, because the types of herbicide that you use, the higher the organic matter, the more you put, the more it takes to work, because it's just there. So you have to break it down. Now, there's products that you can use to break down organic matter. Now, when you break down that organic matter, everything that is in that organic matter then becomes available to the plant that is growing at that time. So nitrogen is one of the products that you can throw down to break down that organic matter. And it does work because it takes, for every ton of, I think it's for every pound or for every ton of organic matter to the acre or whatever, it takes certain, well, I know for every, there's a unit, I don't know what it is, but I can't remember, and right now it's just too early in the morning to be worrying about it, but there's a unit number of organic matter versus the amount of nitrogen that you put down. Now there's a happy medium there, because that nitrogen, when you put, say if you want to, the old adage was for corn here in the East Coast was, oh, well, we'll fertilize for 150 bushels of corn, so you're going to need at least 150 units of nitrogen. But if you do corn on corn, you're going to need to bump that up to about 25, to 175 units to achieve the 150 bushels of corn that you want to grow. And, because the organic matter is going to chew up that 25 units of nitrogen. But in reality, the higher populations, the lack of microbial activity in the soils, because we use different types of corn. I mean, years ago, we never had any problems with corn stalks breaking down. They were pretty much rotted down to the point where they were dust by spring 20 years ago. And then the advent of BT corns and other things like that, the BTs and there's just so many different genetics. This corn stalk is much stouter and it doesn't break down as fast, so you need to add more nitrogen. Well, this product that I purchased and put down will speed that process up, and it will also enhance the microbial activity above and beyond what nitrogen will do, and it will also promote worms and other fauna in the soil. So as that happens, that microbial activity, as they break down this massive amount of organic matter that is getting put down into the soil, or by me, because it's the compost that I put down, I put 7 to 10 tons. It has nitrogen in it. It will eat itself, but it still needs help, because I want that nitrogen there to be available for the plant as well. So as that breaks that down, then it releases its CO2 or carbon, which we need, by the way. So all of you Democrats out there that think that we're going to do away with carbon emission, you breathe it every day. You suck in oxygen, you release carbon dioxide. It's just the way it is. That's the life cycle. All living green things breathe in carbon dioxide and exhaust oxygen. Yeah, that's it. Now, oxygen levels are down from 1950, God knows whatever, because there's a whole bunch more people and deforestation and stuff like that down in the rainforests, where the large amount of oxygen is produced. That's reducing the oxygen. So to reduce carbon emissions, at any significant level, you better learn how to plug a volcano. So the more volcanoes that are out there, erupting and dumping sulfur and manganese and magnesium and all the other lovely bits of ash that we would so much love to have on our fields for free, that we have to purchase now because they take sulfur out of the diesel fuel. They take it's just, trust me, you need carbon. So anyways, now I'm off track here. We don't need to be smelling the exhaust of cars and trucks, obviously, because it stinks. But, but anyways, we do need that sulfur and we do need that carbon in the soil for the plants to convert it. And it's a cycle. So it goes on and on and on. But as you break down that organic matter and this other product that I put down, it will actually make nutrients that are tied up in the clay particles, because clay is organic. And clay with an acidic soil will tie up nutrients. It will just, they're there, but they're unavailable. So you need to make them available. Gypsum is a good way of making those nutrients available. I get gypsum in my compost. My pHs on the home farm are in that mid sixes, 6.2 to 6.5. The other farm, they're a little bit lower. They're in that 6.1, 6.0, which is low. I should put 2 tons of lime to the acre, but I will be, I will be getting eggshells. Eggshells are calcium carbonate, and they will raise your pH, and they stay for a very, very long time. They are awesome. So I'm going to be getting eggshells. That's one of the reasons I got the walking floor trailer, was to get the eggshells. So I'll have eggshells and compost and all this other lovely stuff, and I will be applying it to the fields at a phenomenal rate here in the next year. And I will be pushing these fields to produce phenomenal amounts. Now, I've made videos about reducing your yields and reducing, the number of acres that you do, and I still feel the same way. The problem is, I'm going to be a total hypocrite here. I'm going to be a total hypocrite here. The problem is that nobody's going to do it. Nobody's going to reduce their yields. And if there's a higher yielding variety of corn out there, they're going to plant it. There's a higher yielding variety of soybeans, they're going to plant it. If they can make wheat grow and add an extra 3 to 10 bushels to the acre, they're going to grow it. That's just the way farmers are. We love to have high yields. We love to grow stuff. We love to produce. We love to see the fruits of our labor. And even though we hurt ourselves with those things, it's just the way it is. And that just proves that most farmers are not in it, not in it to make millions of dollars like Bill Gates. That Bill Gates owning all that farmland is probably the best thing for agriculture ever. And I'll be the first one to say it, because nobody wants Bill Gates to own all this farmland, especially people that actually farm the land that Bill Gates owns. Why would I say that? I'm going to tell you. Because Bill Gates then controls the food. Okay, so Bill Gates feels that there's money could be made in the food industry. So he's a gazillionaire, right? He's like Forrest Gump. I'm a gazillionaire, so I'm just going to buy all the farmland, and then I can control the prices of corn, soybeans, wheat, which will then trickle down into pork, beef, and chicken. So anyways, when you do that, it's like, okay, Bill Gates owns 250,000 acres of, or whatever, 250,000 acres of farmland, and he says, I want half of that to lay fallow. Well, you take, I don't know how many acres he owns. He owns a lot. I mean, it might even be into the millions of acres. I have no idea. I don't really care about Bill Gates. He makes shitty software for shitty Dell computers, and I don't know. He's made a lot of money, but I'm not a Microsoft fan. I've had more Microsoft problems than ever. The computer that I'm looking at right now is an Apple. It is an Apple iMac 27-inch iMac. This is my computer case. I bought this computer in August of 2012. This thing is 9 years old in August. 9! I used to go through a computer and a half with a Dell. Dell with Microsoft, crashing systems and just garbage. But anyways, whatever. He's made a lot of money producing cheap shit. Anyway, that's just, there you go. So Bill Gates, he owns all this farmland, and he says, hey, you know what? I want half of it to lay fallow this year. Well, you take that large of a number and pull it out of production, you can control a lot. You take 1 million bushels out of the marketplace, or 10 million bushels, or 50 million bushels out of all grains out of the market. Wow, that'll cause the price to go up. And and you know what he'll do when he does that? He'll be on that stock market playing the commodities. Okay, I'm going to announce next week that I'm going to leave half of my land fallow, and only half the corn will be planted on it, half the beans will be planted on it, half the wheat will be planted on it, and I'm just going to be, and then the price will go, whoop, way the hell up. Now, he can start this in like January, February, like oh yeah, I'm not gonna plant any of the acres. I'm not gonna plant any of them. They're all gonna lay fallow. No more food for you. No food for you. If you're a Seinfeld fan. Boom! What's that do? He's already bought 2 billion bushels of God knows what on the commodities market, and shoom, sends a spike of $2 a bushel across the board. Corn, wheat, soybeans. Bam! That's what you get. Holy shit! He just made $1 trillion, He just made a bunch of money. Then he comes out, he's made all this money and then dumps it, drops it, sells it, whatever. Somebody else buys it up and it does it again. And then he says, you know what? I changed my mind. So he does this like a couple of times. You make billions of dollars in a matter of weeks by doing this. And of course, us poor bastards that are playing in the dirt, we're just making a living playing in the dirt. Yeah, we're like, what just happened? A lot of savvy farmers will be like, oh, I'm going to forward contract for that price. And which will work. I mean, we'll do it. We will do it and pray that it rains and, everything goes right and we don't get shafted because it didn't rain for 3 weeks. I wonder where that's happening. Right here. And I'll touch on that subject on One Lonely Farmer because I'm going to go get a shovel and I'm going to show you what is going on with my corn at this minute. So, anyway, so that's what I see Bill Gates doing. Now, I'm not saying it's what he's going to do. That's what I would do if I was a gazillionaire and I wanted to be a tro-go-gazillionaire, or if there is such a thing. That's what I'd be doing. I'd be like, oh, I bought all this farmland, and you know what? I'm going to kick all the farmers off now, and it can lay fallow for a year, and I'm going to buy commodities, and the price is going to soar to record highs, and the government will get involved, and they'll be like, you can't do this, and they'll try to control a private citizen like they do right now, and, it's just all the fun shit that's going on, and, yeah. So, that's that. That's what'll happen. That's what's going to happen. So that's how they manipulate the markets, and people make a lot of money other than us. So anyway, I'm going to take a couple of these aspirins. I think this is a time for a short break, as Rudy Giuliani says. I'm going to pop a couple of aspirins. I'm going to explain to you why I'm doing that. Because, and I only use Bayer aspirin. I wish I could get Bayer heroin, because that'll take care of that pain. Bayer heroin, banned in the 30s. You can't buy Bayer heroin anymore, or Bayer morphine. They still use it. Morphine is just a more refined. No, heroin is a more refined morphine. It's like taking another step in the refining process. How do I know this? Well, I don't know how I know it. I do. I read it somewhere sometime in my life because I like to read. Hence the glasses. I noticed that I couldn't read even the label anymore, and now I can. So anyway, these things are awesome. But they fuck up my eyes. They really do. They screw up my eyes because when I take these things off and go out into the world and I'm trying to read stuff, it's like, holy cow. When before it was like, yeah, I can still read it. It just isn't as nice. But anyway, so I guess I'm off track here a little bit. What was I talking about? I was talking about corn, obviously, and marketing corn and the higher prices and all this stuff. And Christ, what was I saying? I'm totally off track now. I was going to talk about corn and, the dry weather, the drought. We are in a drought, technically a drought. It hasn't rained here in 3 weeks. It's been about 3 weeks since it's rained here, for real, rained here. We've had a couple of tenths of an inch, nothing that kept us out of the field. A tenth here, a tenth there. It's got to be 3 solid weeks. So I say that's a good thing. Last year, and I can compare this year and last year with my corn crop or our corn crop, my wife's corn crop, I should say, because she's claiming it. I'm not. She's paying me to plant it, if you know, which is fine. Even though we file joint tax returns, it's just something we're doing. But anyhow, with that being said, that corn last year, I planted it. I planted it early, like May 5th, which isn't really too early. You can plant in April, but lately, the last few years, it has been just so bloody cold in April and early May. I opted to wait, and I started planting on the 12th, and it is the 26th, right? So that's 12 and 12 is 24. Yeah, it's been a few weeks. So leading up to planting, I think we started working that ground on the 8th or 9th. And so it hasn't really rained here since the 8th or 9th in any substantial amount. And I planted when the ground was getting pretty dusty. So the old adage, plant in the dust and your bins will bust. If you watch Timmy Cornpecker, he was planting in the dust, and I think he's going to do well. If you look at my corn that's growing that was planted in the dust this year, it is growing at a phenomenal rate. I mean, that stuff is this tall already. And since emergence, it's just a raging bull. It's got like 4 leaves on it and just going like hell. But last year, I planted it on the 5th of May, and it rained, and it got cold, and it sat down there for 2 weeks. Like 2 weeks. I'm nervous. I'm like, holy shit, I got a lot of money in this thing, and it's down there. It's so cold. I'm wearing sweaters and sweatshirts for 2 weeks, and then finally it warmed up, and I was afraid that it was going to crust over. And I do have a rotary hoe. I was afraid it was going to crust over and seal it down there, and then I would lose the crop and have to replant. And I just didn't want that this year. But because it rained and it got wet, the first dry spell that we had, I was in North Carolina baling straw. And my parents are calling me and like, hey, it's getting pretty damn dry up here. Like really dry. You're not getting curling yet, but it's looking waxy. It starts to look waxy before it actually curls up. Now, a curling corn plant it's self-defense against drought. So when people see a field of corn, it's all onions, looks like a bunch of onions. That's actually the corn in self-defense mode. If you're a farmer, you already know this. These new corn varieties that are designed to be drought tolerant, they will curl so much faster. When I was a kid and corn curled, that was pretty much a death blow because it could only handle that for 2 or 3 days, and then the tips would yellow, and before you know it, it just stops growing, and then you're screwed because especially if it happens during the tassel when it's pollinating. So, and I've had that happen. But these new varieties, they'll curl right up, like by 10 o'clock in the morning, they're all curled up because it's hot as hell and dry down below, but it's canopied. It just doesn't have enough moisture down below to pull it up into the plant. The curling effect is actually the amount of moisture that is evaporating off of the plant is evaporating faster than the roots can bring it up up the stalk into the tips of the leaves, and that's why it curls, because it's basically drying up like paper because there's not enough moisture coming from the root system up. So this brings me to plant in the dust and your bins will bust. So I planted, it was dry, damn dry. I mean, right away, there was a 2 inches or 1.5 inches of dry, crusty soil on top of that corn seed corn. Well, when it sprouted, it went down. It's like, hey, it's hot and dry up there, because you'll see the shoot start to come, and then it would just straighten out, and then it stopped for like 3 days. The shoot never moved. Because I'm out there digging every day, like, man, what the hell is going on? This stuff should shoot up. I would like to see it come through the ground before we get a pounding rain, because I put it a little deeper than I normally would. I would love to be able to stick corn 2.5 inches deep. I would love to be able to stick that seed 2.5 inches deep, but I can't because we have that clay type soil, and when you do things like that, that shoot has to, that sprout has to go through this much dirt to get out. You'll get what they call accordioning, which is when it just kind of crimples up like an accordion, and it'll never emerge, it'll never produce. So you got that that effect there, which I didn't have. Last year I was a little worried about it, but I put my seed down 2¼ inches. 2¼ inches, which is where I wanted it. I was nervous about doing it, but last year, even after we got the pounding rain at 2 inches, it came right on up through. I was quite pleased with the way it went. It was going to be hot and it was going to be dry, so I knew it. So I just took that step and said, we're going for broke, buddy. I took the risk and it's paying off. So it laid down there. Now it knows that it's dry up top. It knows it's dry. Now, last year when it got really wet, it knew it was wet and it knew that it needed sunlight. It needed that heat in order to keep going. So instead of putting a root system down, it went up. So I didn't get that root system, that massive root system that we all have grown to see with the brace roots and everything. Didn't really get as many brace roots as I would have liked to see last year. And we had a hurricane come through and high winds, and I had lodging because of it. So this year, planted in the dust, it has put down a major root system. There's roots down there like that or more right now, and the corn is like, I'd say it's 5-6 inches tall now. And well, I'm going to get a tape measure out and look at that for everybody, and we'll just take a look at it. So, and I'm going to dig down and pull out a plant or two and show you how deep those roots really are, and they're stooling out. They're just like spider webs out through the soil, looking for nutrients, looking for water, which is where I want them. So if we do get a hurricane again this year, it is a tall variety that I plant to get away from the deer. The deer will bite the silk off of every freaking stalk there. But again, deer are lazy animals, so my population is high. They don't like forcing their way through. Now I see everybody with their row unit shutoffs, the row shutoffs. Great for saving seed, right? Excellent idea. You cross rows and that GPS shuts the electric row units off. Everything is right where it needs to be. I would love to do that to my corn planter, but I also don't want to do that with my corn planter because of the deer population we have. So when you run those end rows, right, those end rows, and then you do your headland or your end rows, or you got your main rows and then you got your end rows. Well, when your row units come across, even if it's on an angle, the second it hits a row, it shuts off. That exposes the main rows, or the long rows. I call them long rows. The long rows, short rows, and end rows. You only have headlands when you plow and work your ground. That's for that. But end rows, the ends of the fields, or the end rows of the fields. So with those row shutoffs, boom, it comes to it, it stops. So if the deer come into the field on, say, the corner, which is where it's the thinnest, or open, this year I backed up to the edge of the field, dropped the corn planter, and went. I took a little more care in how I planted. And in the sharp corners, in the sweeping corners, I just went right on around the corner. So that, and what happens there is the wheels that drive are actually closer to the center, so the wing units, they're actually going to have corn spaces that big. And if you've ever shot a deer or looked at a deer, they're not much bigger than that. They're not much wider than 8 inches. So they'll get in there that way. And then they'll go into the main rows, or the long rows of the field, and they'll just walk down and bite the silk off of the ears because it's sweet. That's where it's very sweet and they like it. Or they'll just grab the ear, rip it off, take the silk, and then walk to the next one and do it again, and so on and so forth. And when you get a herd of 100 deer in a 20 or 30 acre field, they can really do a lot of damage in one night. So that's why I'm growing the tall varieties, and that's why I seal the field. And when I say I seal the field, I literally seal the field. I'm okay with sending seed across rows, across rows. You know, I got some people that hate that T at the end, but I guess it's just the way we talk here, right?
Left.
Look at that. Ooh, sexy mama. Anyway, that's my wife. Anyways, so I seal them off by going over those long rows with the end rows. Okay. I'm not going to go spend $20,000, $30,000 to update my planter to end that, because I'm only growing 300 acres of corn this year. Am I going to do more next year? I don't know. Am I going to do less next year? I don't know. The reason I'm growing corn is for my sanity. Okay, I've always enjoyed growing corn. Okay, and I kind of made the decision 2 years, 3 years ago when I bought that corn planter that I was going to grow corn for fun. That's all, just for fun. All right. And I've had a lot of fun doing it. I feel a lot better about my life. I feel a lot better about what I'm doing because I'm testing the limits. I'm just concentrating on these few farms that I have corn in. I'm going to push these farms to the point that they will not produce one more bushel of corn. Uh, and that's just the cold hard fact. That's what I want to do. If I had 1,000 acres of corn or 2,000 acres of corn, which I could grow 2,000 acres of corn and farm them all to, you know, to produce 175 bushel corn, that would be great. To do 175 bushel corn here in New Jersey would be awesome. That's a nice average. It looks really, really nice. It looks good. People look at it and, ooh, look at the pretty corn. But that's not what I want to do. Because this has been my, let's see, what would you say? My fun thing to do. Growing hay is growing hay. You know, you can change varieties of grasses and do that, but it's still, it's more work than it's worth at times, you know, and that's the truth. I mean, the challenges of growing hay and producing hay, you know, what are you going to get, 1.5 tons or 2.5 or even 3 tons to the acre? We pray for 3 tons to the acre, but it's hard to do. And let's face it, it's mow it, dry it, rake it, bale it, stack it, load it, haul it, come home and do it all over again. And it's a lot of work. Corn and soybeans a lot easier. So I opted to do the fun thing, which was to grow the maximum amount of grain on dryland corn out of that ground that I have and see how hard and how far I could push it with the different nutrition, the different, you know, what I've learned over the years of planting corn, what I have forgotten, and what is abstract and odd that I know will work because I've done the research and it's readily available, cheap to produce higher yielding corn, and then take the fodder and sell the fodder to the mushroom grower, right? Because the mushroom growers buy corn fodder, and there you go. So that's another thing. So if I can produce enough of the grain to pay for whatever, well, let's put it this way: if I grow enough grain, say I produce 220 bushels to the acre off of this as an average, 220 bushel, which I did 216 last year, so 220. If we have the water, 220 shouldn't be too hard to do. It shouldn't be too hard as long as we have the water. It should be actually a disappointment for me if I only get an average of 220 bushels because I've leveled out some of these other fields. I did a lot of experimenting last year. I didn't share it with you, but I did a lot of experimenting last year. Different varieties, all the same company, but different varieties. I should have tried a couple of Pioneer varieties, but I didn't. I just didn't feel like it. So, but anyway, the Golden Harvest seems to be pretty decent, and it does what it says it does, and I'm pretty happy with it. Pioneer, I'm gonna try Pioneer next year, maybe. I don't know. I'll get up with the Eastern Shore farmer and get him. He can get me in touch with his Pioneer seed salesman, and we can see where we go from there. Because I don't even know where to buy Pioneer seed here. It's funny, but it's not available here. I can find Pioneer seed in the Philippines, but it's hard to do it here. I could insert a photograph of the Pioneer seed in the Philippines because they have Pioneer signs. It was the craziest thing. It was right out around Mount Arayat in Pampanga, Philippines. Nobody's supposed to know about it, but this farmer does. Anyway, yeah. So these varieties are really good, and I'm going to push them to the limits, and well, that's just my fun thing to do. I don't care to go and produce 1,000, 2,000 acres of corn. I have no desire to go back into soybeans. Maybe I will this coming year. I kind of might want to rotate, but I make enough money with the fodder that pays the that pays the rent on the properties, because I pay rent on these properties that I put it on as good soil. I only pay rent on good soil; the rest I don't. But it'll pay the rent on the farms and the fertilizer that it takes to produce this. That's what the fodder pays for. The grain, yeah, fertilizer, herbicide, and rent is all paid through the fodder. The grain pays for the machines, obviously, because they don't run for free, and the fuel, machines, and other inputs that it takes to do this thing. So I made pretty good money on corn last year. Really, actually, stupid money on corn last year, and a lot of farmers did make a lot of money on corn last year. I made a little extra because of the corn fodder. Now, you gotta know the mushroom growers that take it and the mushroom growers that won't take it. And if you're not a long-time supplier of materials to a mushroom grower, you're not getting in with fodder. You're just not. You're not going to knock on their door and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to go bale. I'm going to pay somebody to bale this stuff, shred it and bale it and stack it, and then I'll just haul it in the off time. They won't buy it. I'm sorry about your luck. It just doesn't happen that way. If you have not ever supplied into a mushroom farm before, they will not take your fodder. They won't. Or they might take it, but you're not going to make any money on it. You won't. It'll be like, what did I do this for? You know, and the reason that I take it off is because the organic matter that I really truly want on the fields isn't the stalks, because stalks are hard to break down. It's the compost, because the compost is broke down already, and if you get a hold of the corn stalks that are in that compost, they turn to dust like that because they're already broken down. The nutrients are all available to me at that point. So if I take 3 tons of stalks off or 4 tons of stalks off and then put 7 to 10 tons of compost down, I've added more organic matter to the soil, and I've added more organic matter to the soil that's already at that stage of decomposition, and all those nutrients are all just right there, because mushrooms don't take out mushrooms do not take out the nutrients that are there. So if there's 1,000 pounds of potash and 1,000 pounds of phosphate and 1,000 pounds of nitrogen in what I put down on the ground, which it's not, that's abstract numbers. If it's there while they're growing the mushrooms, it's there when I put that stuff on the soil. So yeah, it's really good stuff. So that's why I'm using it, and it's hard to get right now. Right now, I'm going to be hauling it all winter long, and I'm hoping to get a couple of 100 loads home with that stuff, you know. So a couple of 100 loads home. What else was I going to say about this? I guess I've been doing this for 40-some minutes. So if you don't know about mushroom soil, it's time-consuming to get it. It's time-consuming to put it on. And if you're trying to farm huge numbers of acres, and this is something that you are going to try to put on every acre that you farm, I'm sorry, this is not for you. It's for people like me that only want to grow a few 100 acres for fun and to just push the soil to its limits. Now, this coming year, I will not be putting 10 tons to the acre. I will be putting 20 tons to the acre on the same ground. Now that compost, it breaks down over the course of 3 years. So year 1, you get 50% of what's there, right? 50% of what I put on comes back to me through the grain and the fodder. Second year, you get 25% or so. Maybe it's a third more. Oh, that's Larry. I better go. I'll talk to y'all later.